As we all go through life, we discover this thing called issues. Maybe you didn't get the job you want, maybe you just didn't get accepted into the college that you dreamed of going to, or maybe you're going through a midlife crisis where you're having all these mental breakdowns because you don't know what the future holds and you think that nothing is going to work out. I watched an anime recently called Welcome to the NHK, where it showcases the issues that we may go through in life and what it would look like if we just gave up trying. Basically, you have a person who is locked in his studio apartment with no job, no friends, and just has nothing in life going for him. This is a textbook definition of a failure. What I love about this series is how it shows that you can be dealt a terrible hand, but despite that, you have to be the one that makes serious change in your life. And that's what I want to talk about today. If you haven't seen the show, I'm going to give a brief recap along with some spoilers, so just a little warning there. The main character is Satou. He is a NEET who will lock himself up in his studio apartment, and he will never go outside and he will never socialize with anybody. Basically, he's a Reddit moderator, and due to this isolation from the world, he goes crazy. The reason he believes that he's in this situation is because of a conspiracy against him called the NHK. It's supposed to be an evil organization that wants more people to become what's called NEETs, who are basically shut-ins. And in the first episode, we see just how bad his condition is. His place is a mess, he is lonely, and frankly just going quite insane. But that changes when he meets a young girl named Nakahara. She wants to help Satou out. And together, the two of them go on some normal adventures through life while continuing to go through counseling with Misaki. He also finds out that the next door neighbor that's been bothering him is actually an old friend from high school, Yamazaki. Together, they make an eroge game. And the reason for that is because Satou doesn't want Misaki's help. So he pretends to act like that he's working on a video game, but now he actually has to with Yamazaki. So Yamazaki usually does the heavy lifting. He's the one that's doing the art, the music, just about everything, while Satou's job is to just simply write the script. And of course, he's struggling with that. As we also see, he reunites with his high school something named Hitomi. And they keep in touch a little bit throughout the story. She isn't going to play a major role, but she does play a role with Satou's development. So pretty much throughout the story, we see him going through counseling with Misaki and attempts to make an eroge game with Yamazaki. But basically the goal is to try to change and to get out of his comfort zone. So it's probably just a regular slice of life anime where things kind of just go smoothly, right? No. It gets so much worse for him. This is something that I would like to call shit happens. Apologies for the poor handwriting. He doesn't want help at first, and his condition just keeps getting worse and worse, as in the beginning he develops a little thing called a hentai and eroge addiction. We even see him get addicted to a video game at one point and just completely shuts down. And as this continues on, he goes through this downward spiral where things just keep getting worse and worse for him. But again, you have the character Nakahara who tries to help him to get out of his comfort zone and to be able to fix him. Basically, the stereotypical I can fix him type of gal. So that's kind of the plot summary. I didn't want to go too deep into detail of what the plot was about. What I really want to talk about though is Satou's character. We have Satou's issues. Obviously, first of all, he's depressed, he's got anxiety, he's got self-doubt, he's a loser, he's antisocial. I don't know why I decided to change my voice there. He's disgusting. So basically, he's got all these type of mental health issues going on with him. And when somebody finally comes along, he rejects it because, again, he believes that it's part of this conspiracy with the NHK. He eventually accepts the help, begrudgingly, and has occasional relapses throughout the story. And while, of course, he puts blame on the conspiracy, it's really just his own fault. And that is because of his mindset. In his mind, he thinks, why bother? Why bother trying to put in any effort? Because there's this conspiracy out against him, so there's just no point. Other issues that he has throughout the story as well is that he gets addicted to, like I mentioned before, hentai and the eroge games. He also gets pulled into a group suicide, and then he also gets pulled into an MLM scheme, and of course he falls for it because of his weaknesses and his faults. Basically, throughout the story, he takes one step forward, and then it seems like he takes 15 steps back. And we see that he refuses to change because he doesn't believe he can change. And that's where this anxiety and self-doubt come in. And basically, once you believe that you can never change, and once you start to cave into this anxiety and this depression, you basically get this person. He came up with this organization and blames people around him for his issues. And that's why he believes he is the way he is. A failure. And what you'll probably see if you've watched the show, or if you are beginning to watch the show, you'll probably hate him because you see that he just puts blame on everybody, and he just isn't a very likable person to start. But the thing is that's how we all are. We don't want to put blame on ourselves at all. We would rather put blame on other people or our circumstances. I mean, have you seen the subreddit, Am I the Asshole? We are just a ton of toxic a-holes because that is how we are. So I want to go back to the fault mentioning about anxiety. They do a really great job of showing what anxiety is like and how it has affected his entire life. And as he continues to live this life, he gets more and more anxiety, and that continues to lead to this self-doubt, not believing that he can change. But we do also have another contestant who you may consider as a failure in life. Again, spoiler warning for this. That person is the one that is trying to change Satou, Nakahara. She considers herself a failure because of her past issues in life, stuff that she quite honestly had no control over but still takes blame for it. And due to her fault, she wants to reach out and help Satou, but she helps for the wrong reasons. She's only doing it so she can feel better about herself. And this leads to a lot of issues throughout the show with her and Satou. What I really like about Nakahara is she wants to be better, but would rather help Satou than help herself, which I think really represents how we try to put others above us than try to actually take care of ourselves. Instead, she helps Satou because she thinks that it may help her, which of course doesn't work like that. These two people, you would consider them a failure. But the thing that I really like is how it shows something else, where basically you decide to actually change. As most of you probably know, change happens slowly. It is never immediate. Satou, throughout the story, didn't have this grand awakening moment where suddenly everything clicked and he was suddenly just better. What is true, though, is the choices that he made and the circumstances surrounding him made him change. That's why in the ending, spoiler warning, when he gets a job, it isn't this crazy big deal at all, because the change and effort that he put in finally came to fruition. A lot of people think with change, it's going to look like this, where basically people think that growth is completely linear. Any skill that you develop or anytime you work on something, it's always going to be linear. You are completely wrong if you think that, you piece of filth. This is what change is more like, which is what most people would call the stair-step approach. As you see, it is very different because obviously, like I said, it's like stair steps. This is how growth usually is in any skill or if you're trying to change in something. What's different is here, there's little gaps. Now these little breaks and little gaps, this is where change happens. It isn't just a continuous growth, a continuous linear line that occurs. Now, where we see the little peaks here, that is what we call the results. As soon as we get past those points, that's where the results are. Now, you may think, oh, when we see this is where we finally changed. That's not true. Let's say you're trying to work out and you've been working out for quite a while. You may be, let's say if you're at like an intermediate level, you may be like right here. And what you may think is you kind of hit this wall where maybe you're stuck at whatever weight and you just can't seem to get past it. You may think you're not growing at all, but you actually are. You see, you probably started here before, and the reason why these little breaks are getting bigger and bigger, as you continue to grow, it becomes harder and harder to get to a higher level. So at the beginning, you have this very, very little tiny gap, because that's where you start. And almost immediately, whenever you start a new skill, you almost instantly go up. But after you've been more of like an intermediate phase, you're not going to see as much growth. What you don't realize is that you are right here, and if you just keep pushing a bit more, you're going to end up getting closer and closer and closer to this point. And then once you finally reach past that, you end up right here. And you may think, oh, now I finally see my growth. The reality is you were already growing in this area here. You just didn't see it because it's not visible to you. That's how it works, and that's how Welcome to the NHK shows change. As long as you continue to keep going at it, you're still going to be fine. As we see throughout the story with Welcome to the NHK, we see Satou have relapses where he develops a hentai addiction, and while he may be like right here starting, he's still learning and he's still growing because he continues to keep working and he still continues to push through. So eventually he gets to here where he sees results and he's starting to get better. He's socializing more. It's a bit easier to actually go outside and he doesn't freak out when that happens. That is what I call change, baby. A quote that comes to mind, which is quite honestly one of my favorite quotes, comes from the show Legend of Korra, where Aang tells Korra that when we hit our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change. And what I really love about this is because of how true it is. Of course, Aang being Aang, he just spits facts. The circumstances and points that you hit can really affect how you grow or not grow. There's one episode towards the end of Welcome to the NHK called Welcome to the Bluebirds, where Satou and his friends meet another shut-in, whose condition is even worse than Satou's. He can't even go outside his room. His sister is the only one that takes care of him, and it's just sad seeing him be in this state. We see at one point towards the end of the episode, his sister has to leave, and she's gone for a couple days, and since her brother cannot function, he goes quite insane. He quite literally starts starving himself because he can't support himself at all because he is a complete shut-in. So he hits his lowest point, and he can do one of two things. He can either end the suffering, well, he can take it the bad way, or he can do the right thing and decide to make a positive change in his life. He gets a job and he starts to support himself just a little bit. And we see in the show, like I mentioned before, Satou's relapses. As we see in the end, very similar to what we saw in Welcome to Bluebird, he hits his lowest point. He's starving himself because nobody's taking care of him, nobody's bringing food to him, and he just has no way to function. And so, of course, similar to what we saw in Welcome to Bluebird, he gets himself a job so he can support himself. Either that, or he could take the no way out, And then by the end of the story, he starts losing some of his friends. Yamazaki is forced to move, Hitomi moves on with her life as she begins to get married, and Satou is left alone once again. He hits these walls as we see throughout the story, but I would still consider that growth, because in the end, he's still trying. And that's what matters most. Probably by far the biggest point that this show makes is that you have to be the one to decide to change. As we see with Misaki, she tries to tell herself that Satou needs her because she doesn't want to deal with the abandonment and abuse that she went through in the past. So in her mind, the only way that she can feel better is if somebody needs her, because throughout her life, nobody ever needed her, and she feels like that's her fault. Towards the end, Nakahara finally realizes that she can't just force Satou to change. We get a very emotional moment between the two because we see that Satou is actually improving, but Nakahara, well, throughout the story, she was going backwards. During that emotional moment, again, spoiler warning, she tries to take the no way out to solve all of her problems. Luckily, that doesn't happen. Instead, what we see are two failures coming together, and they decide to blame the NHK. Basically, the thing is that they both had the same goal to rebel against the NHK, and in order to do that, they have to change. They made their own decision to change. In the end, nobody forced them to change. Wherever you are in life, you may have big dreams. Maybe you want to be rich, maybe you want to be famous. Whatever it is, it may require change and dedication to reach that. And in order to do that, you can't have somebody come along and force you to change, because if they do that, you're going to hold a grudge against them. Now, I'm not saying you should never ask for help. Obviously, asking for help is very important, but I think it's even more important to understand that whatever situation you're in, you realize that you have to change, depending on whatever situation you're in, of course. You can take this extreme case with Satou, who let all of his issues come together, all this anxiety and self-doubt, just morph into this failure. Whatever goal it is that you have, maybe it is something similar to Satou where you're trying to not be a shut-in, or maybe you want to go to the gym, learn a new language, whatever it is, you have to start, and you have to want to actually be better. Anyways, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Anyways, I'm MoeFoeGenius, and I'm signing out. Hope you all have a wonderful day.